Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Take Two. As you can see, I've got Jordan with me tonight. Thank you, Jordan, for being here.
Morning.
Hope everyone is doing well out there. You guys are staying healthy and safe. I do want to throw a reminder out that Friday, June 11th at 7 p.m., we are going to be having a Zoom call with everybody who's a part of the Genesis community who can be on there. I want to share just some things with you guys about when we're going to start meeting up, which is the 20th of June. We are opening up quite a bit more. And to also introduce to you some of the leadership and what people are doing, have opportunity to share with you financially what's been happening since the beginning of the year to the current date, and some of the vision we have for our works building and other things that we are just even brainstorming about, even just before we came on now. Jordan and I are talking about just ideas, and there's so many ideas, right? So many things we can go, so many directions, which is really kind of exciting to know that so many things, so many opportunities. And so we hope you guys will join us June 11th, 7 p.m. on Zoom. We will have the link that will take you there on all of our social media, and we'll probably make some phone calls and text it to you as well to try and get you guys to join in on that. And Gil says, "Nice haircut, Jordan." So.
Oh yeah, I got a haircut. Thanks, Gil.
And hello, Gil. And we do want to let you guys know as well, if you have any questions throughout our time this evening, you can write them in and we will address them. It looks like Jason's coming here too. Jason had a couple questions last week and thoughts. So we want to welcome that. And with that being said, as things are opening up more, we do want to invite you to come down here on a Wednesday night as well. We can seat people spaciously. Is that the right way to say it? We can space you.
Good.
Yeah, sounded good. We can seat you spaciously. Again, we're a small enough group where we can address these things. If everybody has been vaccinated, we can address those things. Hey, Jason. But we want to see your faces again and we want to hear your voices again. That's what this is about. And so we want to make opportunity for that to happen. And we're planning to do more things to make that happen. But tonight, this is happening. We're here and we're talking about what I shared on Sunday. And if you weren't here on Sunday, I hope you still get something out of it. Just a real brief overview. I've been talking about how our lives are transformed, and we've been looking at ways that transformation takes place. We talked about the Kairos moment, which is here on the detect, where you're aware of something, and then we lean into that, which is the digging part of it, where we're trying to find out what it is trying to tell us. And now we're in this discerning. We're discerning what it is we have gotten information on, and trying to find out maybe the lies we've been telling ourselves, why these things are showing up in our lives, if we are seeing things in a skewed way and we need to realign our vision to maybe a truth. And so in that vein, I've talked about the idea of security, discerning security, belonging, and significance. And these are some things that we all crave. I think we all desire. And last week I talked about significance. And the idea of significance, I think it's a pretty powerful one because I think it's something that we all desire. But I want to throw this out to you so I don't keep rambling, Jordan. Maybe give me your kind of 30,000 foot view of the idea of significance and maybe some of the thoughts you had on that.
Okay. I think number one, I think even in this conversation, because this series with this triangle and the grace truth matrix and all this stuff has been going on for a while, I think it's worth it to acknowledge that I think the way we're going about talking about certain ideas and the perspectives that you're bringing in a lot of your talks in this series are non-traditional. They are novel ideas for most people. And I think that is it's good to not necessarily challenge people with new ideas, but to bring different perspectives and say, I know you think this, but have you looked at it this way? And in that idea of significance, I think sometimes when I talk and I use words that are commonly thought as one thing, but I'm trying to bring a new idea, it can get confusing. So when you were talking about significance in the sermon, I thought it was really interesting. I never equated the words significant and worthy together. And now that you brought it up in the talk, and I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, I could see that, but like to be significant is to be worthy of. That's what I remember you saying. That idea, I think, is a radically different idea than how we normally look at significant. Because to me, significant is more like noticeable.
Okay.
And I think a lot of times we can confuse certain things for other things. We can confuse the all that glitters isn't gold. There was a time in the United States called the Gilded Age, and the idea was we wanted everything to look like it was solid gold, but we really just like pressed on a little thin layer on top of gold, and underneath it wasn't that good. But when you're looking at both the solid gold and the gilded object that looks gold, they both look gold.
Right.
And so trying to separate those out and say like, oh, when we're talking about significant, what do we mean, and what are we trying to get at today? And I thought that the idea of thinking that you're worthy is really important. I think there's a lot of stuff today that is challenging for individuals to go through, like feeling that you are enough. I think that's another way of saying I'm worthy. Of feeling that you don't need to go prove yourself. I think that's another way of feeling worthy. And they're different ways, I think, of saying the same thing. Like saying I am not enough is the same thing as saying I need to do more. Because they both have the same result.
I think it's good to have that kind of nuance, because there are so many things that I was thinking Sunday and sharing that I find myself on both sides kind of, well, you're not significant by what you do, but what you do can be significant, right? And so it almost seems like, well, then doesn't it matter? It's like, well, of course it matters, but then it goes back down to, is this what makes you who you are, the things you do? And in some ways it is, but then it gets to the motive, and do I have to do it to become who I am, or do I do it because of who I am, right? Those little changes can make all the difference in the world. The illustration I used as I've been going through the temptation of Jesus, when the devil tempted him and took him to a place and he saw all the kingdoms of the world, and he says, all these I will give to you if you will bow down and worship me, right? And the temptation there, we see kind of insight to it in Jesus's response when he says, you shall worship the Lord your God alone, and him will you serve. The whole idea of that is, my life isn't going to be about the getting the kingdoms, even though that's my purpose. The way you're wanting me to go about doing it is not how I am supposed to do it, and I will not find my value, significance in doing this that way. But it's still to do it, right? It's still the Messiah's job, if you will. What's your job? I'm the Messiah, right? What's your job, Messiah? I'm to usher in the new kingdom. Okay, so what the story is telling us is the devil is telling him, here's the end game, I'll give it to you now. And Jesus is saying, no, that's not the point, right? The point is actually how I get to there, not just getting there. And that's where the value of what he does becomes the significance of who he is, that's bigger than the goal.
Yeah.
Hit me with something.
I'm trying to practice this thing called listening, where I don't formulate a response until I know the person is done. It's very difficult for me, but I'm trying.
Not alone there.
But I think the part that you were talking about, where deriving significance from action, or kind of like achievements. I am my achievements. I am what I do. I heard this really interesting thing from a friend of mine a long time ago, where we were talking about how do you know something, and he had this idea that you literally don't know something, or you can't know you know something until you've proven it, until you've acted it out. You can't say you know math until you've done math. You can't say you know how to fix a car until the car's fixed. And so there can be some amount of action involved in significance, but then I think most ideas that I spend a lot of time like wrestling with in my head and trying to come up with something that makes sense to me, as I get more into it, I usually start realizing that it's not black and white. There's not this one neat straight path to where I'm trying to get to go. It's normally a combination of different things, and even within the combination of different things, in order to get where I'm trying to go, I have to look at each thing a certain way, and there are ways to look at each thing incorrectly that will not get me where I'm trying to go. So like if you think about it like those audio panels that have like microphone, drums, voices, all the things, you can like slide up the volume, each one and down. You have to pay attention to all of them, and they all have to be slid to the right place for it to sound good. And just because you know that all of them are there, if they're slid to the wrong place, not good.
Yeah.
And it's about understanding it's not just the main volume that covers all of them, and you can only do that. Sometimes you have to do little tweaks and adjustments, and you have to pay attention to all of the stuff. And there's times where it can seem like different sliders are conflicting, but I think the beauty in trying to talk about this and think about this is working that out. Where you said something a few sermons ago. You said you act out what you believe. And it's like, well, are my actions my significance, or do I have to act in order to have significance, or are my actions a product of my significance? And it can seem very chicken and egg if you don't get too deep into it. But I think it's not about trying to combine all the things. It's about, okay, if I think about it this way, how does it make sense to me? If I think about it this way, how does it make sense to me? If I think about it this way, how does it make sense to me? And everybody can do that. It seems really complicated, but like Sam, for instance, Sam is a father, and Sam is a pastor, and Sam is a dog trainer. And Sam can go about stuff as a dog trainer, and he can disengage from that and go about stuff as a father, and he can disengage from that and go about stuff as a pastor. And it's important for him to do that and dial the different things correctly in each area, and not lump them all together and be pastor, father, dog trainer all the time. Because it's like when you lump it all together, it can get confusing. It sometimes makes sense to bring it out.
Speak. Bringing it down back to the talk, right? I mean, because that nuance is so important, because we are looking in the temptation of Jesus. It's how he's going to get there, right? And one of the things that, as I was putting this together, that was kind of a light bulb moment for me was, what does it mean to bow down and worship the devil, right? Because in my mind, it's, again, black mass, pentagram, goat head, it's the whole things that I've seen in movies kind of thing. And it's like, no, that didn't even exist at this time. That wasn't even in the sphere. And so it had nothing to do with that kind of a thing. It was really about how he was going to live out his life. Was it going to be to take these things by force and by power, or was it going to be by the cross? And I compared that to when Peter said to him, Lord, you're never going to go to the cross. And he says, get behind me, Satan, right? he almost says the same thing to Peter that he says at the end of this one, "Get away, Satan." He says that to Peter in his statement because it's really the same temptation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't go to the cross, do this another way. You can bypass that. You just need to, get all these people on your side. You can make this happen. That was kind of a continuing temptation throughout the Gospels. Is they want to make him king. He has to, help them see that whoever's going to be the greatest needs to be the servant. That's a theme that is happening throughout the Gospel, throughout the New Testament, and that's what I think the whole book of Revelation is about. Is the idea of the kingdom of God does not look like the kingdoms at that time Rome. And it was powerful and a dragon and all these, crazy illustrations to present the imagination with these powerful things. And then here is a lamb that's slain, right? And so I think seeing that nuance that you were talking about, there's different ways you can look at this that, okay, this way now lines up. And what does it line up to? It's lining up to the character, I believe, if I can call that, of God. That's a strange thing. God has a character, because already I've limited God to an understanding. But there's something about how Jesus did this that is a revelation of what God is like. That's what I believe this is kind of alluding to. God is not going to act the way everyone in the world who's been taking authority and ruling acts. He's going to do it different. And his significance isn't how he isn't getting there, it is how he gets there because of who he is, not just what he does.
Yeah. I think that, to me, that like this whole thing of you act out what you believe is, like, to me, like, super relevant here. And in terms of, like, all the different little switches and the nuances and stuff, I think that everything that existed is a product of God's creation. Even the devil. And because of that, I think there's a way to view things that is more godly or more kingdom. Everything. The abuse you're suffering, the depression you have, the job you don't like the shoes that don't fit, like everything, there's a way to kind of like adjust the microscope and make it clear. Or like, switch the knobs to make the music sound good. And I think sometimes in going to the telescope thing, where like maybe you have these binoculars and you can like adjust the dial to make it like clear or more or fuzzy. There's a point that you can adjust it to what you're looking at is clear. And if you don't adjust it to that point, I think you have a risk of misunderstanding what you're seeing and dealing with it differently because you're not seeing it for what it is. And to talk about acting out what you believe, if your beliefs are based on a perspective that's fuzzy, like you don't have the right glasses on, you may act out wrong things. And you may not even have a bad belief, but it's about dialing it in and making sure that belief is applied to reality. It's applied to what's actually in front of you, not what your mind is creating for you, not the story that this person is telling you that's false, not the news. The like trying to have reality and then have like a kingdom perspective on what's happening with reality. And I think those two together is like kind of the way in my mind, where if you don't have a accurate picture of reality, it doesn't matter how good your glasses are. You're not looking at reality. And if you have real reality, but you have bad glasses on, or you don't have glasses when you need them, then you're going to get a fuzzy vision. But if you have both, then it's kind of you have the belief, and you kind of just, I feel, will act out more according with reality, or more according with kingdom principles.
Right. Yeah, I think that's kind of at the heart of that idea, too, of what the temptation was, and the idea of value or significance or worth. Because what we see in the story and the temptation is having the both the reality of what's needing to happen and the kingdom mentality in clear focus.
Yeah.
Right. So that Jesus knows what is happening, but he knows he's seeing it clearly. Right. And I almost think that you could say that the kingdom mentality and reality are the same. In fact, if you're not seeing it in the kingdom perspective, you're probably not looking at things really, you know. And that's the problem, because we try to find now significance in something that is blurry, something that is crumbling, something that is a facade, you know, where in this situation here, and I think it rolls over, the idea of power, the idea of strength is so much a part of how our world is run. You know, it's those who are, you know, have the money who make the rules. It's the might makes right mentality, and whoever is in control rewrites history and writes things to accommodate their way of seeing things, and we see that happen time and time and time again. And in that world mentality, value, worth is put into, can you be the one who dominates the story? Can you be the one who gets the most likes? Can you be the one who has the loudest voice? Can you be the one who, you know, has the most money, drives the nice car, has the most influence, you know? All those things become how you find significance. And when we look at Jesus, everything he did was so backwards, right? I mean, he did not promote himself. He didn't even write a book. You know, the guy didn't have a podcast. I mean, what's going on? He missed that opportunity, right? I mean, he didn't do all the things that were being done to promote himself. In fact, they'd want to promote him, he'd back away. You know, he'd say, oh, you know, the Gentiles, they lord over you, but that's not how it's going to be with you. You know, who's in charge? The one who's relaxing at, you know, on the couch, or the one who's serving them? And everyone thinks it's the one who's relaxing, who has the script on them. And he's really saying all these things that everyone is trying for, they're not what's important. And that's a hard thing to sell, right? That's a hard thing to sell in a world where that's all we're selling. You know, that's what the commercials are trying to tell you. You need this if you want to be happy, if you want to, you know, live this. I mean, gosh, you know, you go through Instagram and there's so many things I need, you know, to make me happy. I need this soap, you know, I need these glasses, I need these shirts, you know, these shirts are going to make me thinner. I got to have one of those shirts, you know, and all these things are there to try and get you to find your significance, your value, what you're worth, to make a prominent presentation of who you are in a way that Jesus flips on its head and says, no, I don't work that way. And that's a hard thing for us to swallow and accept, because it's so against the grain still, right? It's still against the grain, and that we have a difficult time not giving in to all the pressure that we feel around us.
Yeah. I think it can be difficult, especially there's that the scripture that talks about training up a child in a way and he will not depart from it, where like, I have a lot of privilege in my life, and my privilege isn't in the form of gold bars or spinners on my mom's Cadillac or something like that. My privilege is, like, I was allowed to ask questions when I was little. My mom did this thing where she refused to let us wear brands when we were growing up. Not because we couldn't afford it, just because that was the rule. And we wore stuff because we liked it. Like, my brothers, they didn't care what brand it was. It just had to have dinosaurs on it. And to this day, I don't care about what brand it is. I care about, will it work for what I need it to work for? And I think there's a lot of times where the outside pressure, especially if you were raised in a place where that was important, in whatever space, like whatever distraction or whatever non-kingdom perspective was important, it can be very hard to get over that. Where I was thinking of Jesus being tempted by the devil, and I was talking about like changing the binoculars.
Mhm.
And it's like Jesus is like walking through the desert with his like regular Walmart glasses, and then the devil's like, "You want some Prada glasses?" And he's like, "This is my prescription." And he's like, "You want the Google glasses?" And he's like, "This is my prescription." And if you take your cheap Walmart glasses off because they don't look good, and you put your Prada glasses on that are the wrong prescription, you might get in a car accident. You might like walk into a pole or something like that. But I mean, you'll look good doing it.
Yeah.
But there's this danger that you put on the armor of this world, and it doesn't serve you, because the world often is not a accurate picture of reality.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that is the clear vision, right? Is seeing that how the world has been doing things and still does things is lacking. With all the presentation of strength, it's weak. And the weakness shows up in the lives of the people who are trying to be strong. It shows up in how their lives really have less substance, even though they have more things. They have less uh, value because their value is placed in the wrong place. And that idea of the glasses, well, these ones look good, yeah, but you can't see good out of them. Which is more important, right? To be able to see or to look good. And some people, it's like, I still want to look good.
It's like a play on words. It's like, well, the ones that help me see help me look good.
There's something, yeah. Depend on your English. And I love the story. I know. Were you a Lord of the Rings fan?
Oh yeah, I'm actually reading the books now, and I just started the third one because I've been such a big fan the whole time, and watched all the extended versions of the movies, played almost every video game,
Uh-huh.
and I read the Silmarillion, I read through the Hobbit, and I'm on the Return of the King now, right now.
Yeah. 'Cause I love that, image of Frodo in the Lord of the Rings. I just think it's such a beautiful picture. In fact, the Return of the King, my favorite scene is when they're all there and he's crowned king, and he comes before Frodo and Sam and all the guys, and they bow down to him, and he says, "Friend, you bow to no one," and then everyone bows to them, right? That's just such a powerful picture, because here is the person who is like the least impressive. I mean, they got the big hairy feet. They just don't have anything that seems like, oh man, this person is royal, this person is powerful. But this is the person who is needed to, save the world. And again, that's such a beautiful picture, I think, of what we're seeing in Christ and what we're seeing in the idea of significance. Here is someone who has value, who is worthy, but it's not who you would expect. It's the person who seemed weak, but it's the person who had that weakness, who had the ability to see more clearly. Temptation, right, which is to take power and control and do all these things. That is a big theme in the New Testament. I mean, it really isn't throughout all of Scripture. I mean, there's so many times where you see there was a temptation because David took the census, right? And why would God get so upset about that? The whole idea is this idea of I'm powerful, I'm strong. There's always this pushback against when people are doing that. We see this God saying, it ain't about this, but we keep pushing for it. And I think that's an important thing. I'm not going to be king. I'm not going to be political, powerful. But there's still the temptation to try and put value in my life by raising my status in some way. I need to get to a different socio-economical level. That way I can be important, right? I need to make over, whatever that figure is, then I'll be important. And I forget, they did a study where I think it's a certain amount of money, it doesn't matter if you make any more. You're not going to be any or happier. You know, it's just like, it doesn't matter after a point. But we always think, oh, if I make that, I'll be good. You know, oh, if I lose 20 pounds, I'll be good. You know, whatever it is, we keep wanting these things instead of accepting the reality of you're loved right now. And if you don't find the value in who you are, then you won't see things right and do things. Your belief won't take you in the right direction. It'll be skewed. It'll be blurry. It'll, be affected in that way.
Yeah. Interesting fact about the Lord of the Rings. Because the books are like so much different than the movies. It's almost confusing. And you're like, none of that stuff happened. But
Now I gotta read the books.
Frodo starts his adventure on his 50th birthday.
Oh.
He looks like a teenager in the movie.
Yeah.
He's 50 years old. He's then that plays into the story about a little bit about how he's able to make wise decisions and navigate through certain things, and why Sam follows him around and listens to him, because Sam is like his way younger person. But I was gonna say that we're talking about significance. We brought up the word worthy, and I think worthy is, in the context of significance, more the original word. That's more the word I would expect coming from the Bible. And then significance would be more of a contemporary word. But I think it's the same concept. But I think sometimes speaking in the language of the people that are living right now, rather than speaking in the language of the people that lived 2,000 years ago, can help a lot.
Yeah.
And I think one of the words that in my mind is closely associated with this idea of significance that we're talking about right now, at least in today's language, is identity. And Sam was saying a couple things like, if I could just lose this many pounds, I'd be good. If I could just make this much money, I'd be good. I don't think Sam is trying to say that losing weight is bad. Like, if you're in severe pain and your doctor says, if you lost 20 pounds, you'd be in a lot less pain.
Yeah.
That's not what Sam's talking about.
Yeah.
Or if you are struggling to pay your bills and you're like, if I could just make this much money, I wouldn't be like struggling. That's not what Sam's talking about.
Yeah.
But this idea of I'm going to define who I am, or define my importance, my purpose, my meaning in life by some external thing. And it could be status, it could be money, it could be a relationship, it could be my kids. Like, some people like to brag about what their kids are doing all the time.
Yeah.
Or how shiny their wrist is, or something like that. Which was always like really interesting to me. Like, as a little kid, I would watch like National Geographic and stuff. And I used to think that people with lots of jewelry and stuff, because I was nobody in my family, like, I was like, why would you do that? Because like birds love that stuff, and they just come down and get you. That's what I thought when I was little. Like, crows love shiny things. But like, thinking about in terms of who am I, and if you are defining yourself by something that isn't actually connected to you, I think that goes back into what we're talking about of having a skewed picture of reality, where I am my job. The job is not you, because if you quit the job or you got fired, you would still be you, and the job would not be connected to you.
Yeah.
What is you? What is the part that stays when all the other things go? And I'm not saying you should quit everything and stop doing all these things and sell all your watches and stuff like that, but to be mindful about how we build who we are based on the things around us or the things inside of us.
Yeah, I think that's an important, what you said is so important, that you at least understand that it's the whole idea of discerning, right, is to see if it's good, in the right perspective, in the right focus, or not, right? Like the, losing weight. Yeah, it's not bad, but it can be, right? If it's not in the right focus, if it's not playing that role. I think that's an important part of the whole idea of discerning and leaning into this. And with it, I think there has to be a humility, right? because I can't learn if I think I know everything. I won't learn anything new if I think I already know everything there is to know. And how am I going to learn how to navigate or see things more clearly in this idea of who I really am and what it is that really makes me what I am if I'm not humble and able to discern when I'm wrong, when I'm leaning the wrong direction, when I'm focusing on the wrong things. Um, I think that's a huge part of this identity that you're talking about, is to have a good identity. There has to be humility to see where you're at and then understand where you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and to be able to see, well, maybe I want to be something that I really shouldn't. I have the humility to say, yeah, that's where I'm at, and so I need to turn and change and focus here differently. But if I don't have humility, if I have that character that's rigid and prideful, then I'm going to be blind to the changes that need to be made, or I won't see that I am putting focus in the wrong places, or pursuing the wrong things, or maybe pursuing the right things for the wrong reason, like in this story with Jesus. Oh, the kingdoms, yeah, that's my goal. That's what I'm going to do. I'll just get there this way. It takes humility. As I was going through this, and I still am wrestling with it to some degree, is I don't know the best way to find significance or identity. How do I find my identity? I mean, I just don't like the cliche, well, just, whatever, Jesus loves you, then you're good. Um, I understand that, but how do I live that out? And sometimes that's a difficult thing for me. How do I know if my glasses got something on them? How do I know if I've been, steered the wrong way, or just have I don't have a kingdom view? And that was one of the struggles just as I was thinking about this. The only thing, well, not the only thing, but one of the things that I've had to do, something you mentioned at the very beginning, is I have to kind of be quiet, and listen before I just talk. Turning off the radio and not listening to podcasts, having time where I allow my brain to kind of settle, and then I start to see where things lie. Sometimes for me is one of the clear ways that I can find where I'm at in those things. I don't know. That's just for me. I don't know if there's things that you've done that have been helpful to you in finding, where you're at, or if you're skewed in some ways.
Okay. I think like even just admitting that is good, and it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And then admitting it like live on the internet is a whole nother thing. So kudos to you.
All the things I've admitted.
There's a movie that I really, really like called The Dark Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
By Jim Henson.
Yeah.
If you're into VHSs, that VHS was purple. That's when I was a little kid. That's how I knew. I didn't like on the wall of VHS, the purple one. It's kind of a creepy Muppets movie. Mm-hmm. But there's this crystal that cracked, and the shard came out, and all this bad stuff happened because the crystal cracked, and then there's this adventure to like repair the crystal before this thing called the Great Conjunction. And they're looking for the crystal, and there's this box of like glass shards, and only one of them's the crystal. Kind of like there's all these cups, and only one of them is the
Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Which one is it? And they don't know how to find it. And the main character, Jen, forget. He pulls out his like pan flute, and he's like playing different notes, and then he hits this one note, and then the right shard like glows. And I think it sounds really cliche, and I know it doesn't seem helpful when you haven't done it, but there, I feel, usually is a guiding intuition that you're on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
There's some type of harmony between your thoughts and your actions that line up when you're moving more in a way that's good or that's in purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to explain if you haven't gone through it. And it sounds fake. Like when people say, like, when you're really in love, you'll just know. Like, that sounds so fake when that's never happened to you.
Yeah.
But then it happens to you, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
this is different.
Yeah. I think the problem is sometimes we can fool ourselves, right? If we don't want to see, it will just play the note and say, "Oh, that one's glowing." We'll make it up in our mind that everything's okay because whatever reason. Again, usually it's pride. But I agree with you. I think that our lives kind of harmonize with the kingdom when we're doing things the right way, and there's joy. There's things that happen within us that is a satisfaction, even though things might not be going the right way. I know, Jason, you shared with us how you're happier now than you've been, even though all this stuff's happened to you. That would be thinking, oh, those are terrible things. Yeah, but I'm happier now. Things are, you're more in a place where you're healthy and you're seeing things in a better way than you were when you had all the other things that people were telling you didn't have make you happy. The thing is, when you're in those places where you're trying to make it happen, sometimes you can force it, right?
Yeah. I liked what you were saying about sometimes it's good to turn the music off, and sometimes it's good to just sit. And the way I think about that is like, the more important an idea is, or the more impactful a lesson, the more like difficult it is. And it's like food, where if the food is fast food, it's easy to digest, it's easy to get, it's probably not that good for you. But if it takes time to grow the ingredients, it takes time to do the prep, it takes time to cook, and you have to do it right, it takes skill, and then you get the final product and it's good, that's the meal that I want to eat. But if I rush it, like I remember when I was little and I was trying to learn how to bake, and it'd be like, oh, bake for like an hour and a half at 350, and I'd be like, what if I baked for 20 minutes at 500? Like, I remember doing that a bunch of times as a little kid. Like, I just haven't found the right combination to cheat the time. Wasting all this money, and like the whole house smelled terrible. But I'm learning that you can't, if what you really want is the souffle, or if you really want the roast beef and all that kind of stuff, it takes time to prepare, it takes time to marinate.
Yeah.
And the idea that I have with what you were talking about is soup, where I can gather up all these ingredients, I can prepare, I can chop all these ingredients, I can put them in the pot, and I can turn the fire on. But it's like, then I need to wait, I need to sit, and I need to let things happen. And sometimes we're not willing to do that. We're trying to eat the soup as soon as we put everything in the pot.
Yeah.
And it can take some patience.
Yeah, and I think, especially when it comes to seeing our identity, our value, our significance, it's something that we have to live into, right? It's something that happens throughout our lives. There's a constant, recalibrating. There's a constant readjusting, seeing, checking, because I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago, but my significance hasn't changed. I've changed, but those things that are most important are still there. They're just developing, growing, and you can't rush them, right? You can't just, okay, now I'm better, I'm a new person. It's like, no, I had to go through the heartache, I had to go through the losing the jobs, I had to go through these things, and those all are developing the character so that I can continue to grow in a way that is, like the soup, like the souffle, like those things. It has to simmer, it has to take time so that I can see that even here, even through this, this is what is valuable, right? This is what's been through the fire and has come out, shining like gold. Like, it's gotten rid of all the dross. It's made it, because this is what was real throughout my life, and those times. And that's hard, because
Oh yeah.
yeah, I want it now, right? I just want, I want to be good now. I want to see those things. And so that can be our shortcut, you know. Okay, I know how I can be significant. You know, I can get that job. You know, I know how I can, you know, feel like I have an identity. I can, you know, date that girl. You know, I can get that car. All these things we try to shortcut to give ourselves this identity instead of living our lives and letting it simmer and letting it learn and letting it grow. And those are the things. And gosh, there's so many movies that talk about these things, right? I mean, we know it, we see it, we name it, but it's amazing how we still get tempted, you know, by those things. At least I do, you know.
Yeah. It's funny. We're talking about kind of having patience with yourself, which is super important. Like one of my favorite foods, which is kind of an odd food, is the potatoes that come out of the crock pot next to a roast beef. I don't really like the beef that's in there, but the potatoes, oh my gosh, they're so good. But there's only one way to get those potatoes, and that's to go through this whole crock pot process.
Yeah.
You can't fry them and get that. You can't eat. Sometimes we want something, and in this case we're talking about significance, and that can mean different things for each person, but we want something, and we try to figure out all these other ways to get it. But sometimes there's a way, and it may be different for everybody, but trying to avoid the way, that's kind of like the Jonah and the whale story, it can cause you a lot more difficulty than doing it the right way the first time. There was a guy that I used to work with, and I work in aerospace, so people are very particular about doing exactly the right thing, sometimes to within 1,000th of an inch. Like that's even measurable. And he used to always say, there's always enough time to do it right the second time. Where I think when you're trying to figure it out and you don't know what you're doing, which I think is everybody during their life,
Yeah.
There's this temptation to cut corners and to just get it done so we can like live in paradise. But I think a lot of times we get caught up by cutting so many corners that we cut up the piece of paper, and then we have to start over. And I think some people do this over and over and over and don't learn the lesson. But I feel like most people cut corners until they realize that like this is losing paper and I'm not going to be able to draw a good picture on it because the paper's smaller or it's ripped up or whatever. And we at some point sometimes start over, but now we're more careful. Now we're ready to chop the vegetables the right way, and now we're ready to put them in and turn it on and like wait and stuff. And I wanted to ask you, Sam, because I was thinking about the discernment thing that's coming here, where I think a lot of the talk we've been having tonight had words like right and wrong and good and bad. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes for someone that feels like they're kind of on the more beginner side of their journey, mm-hmm. that can be overwhelming to where you think you have to do something good, and if you do something wrong, it's bad. Yeah. Or if you have to be right, you have to be wrong. Like, there's different ways to look at these concepts, and it's not saying like, I'm wrong, I'm bad, I'm insignificant, I'm not worthy. It's saying that thing I did was not so good. That time I stuck that cake in the oven at 500 degrees was not so good. The cake is burnt. I'm not a bad person at all, but the cake is burnt. Yeah. And I need to start over if I want to have a cake. And I wanted to ask you about kind of the what I would call like the in between good and bad, or right and wrong, or yes and no, which mm-hmm. is like being able to sit with I don't know, or I'm mm-hmm. not sure. And I think that's a very important part of simmering, or letting it be in the crock pot. So, yeah.
No, I think that is an important part, and I'm glad you like brought that up, because there isn't that black and white, right? It isn't always, oh, this is right, this is wrong, and what's right now might be wrong later on. And so when I talk in that kind of general terms, it would be from a bigger picture, looking at trajectory. Okay, this is going in the right direction. Even though there's going to be, stops that are wrong, there's going to be mistakes that are made, there are going to be things that are done that aren't, good, quote, but you can still be heading in that good direction. And the same thing is true, the trajectory when your life is going in a place that's destructive, it's hurting you. You can do good things. I know some people who have been drug addicts, who have been generous, good people, right? Even though their life is heading in a general direction that might be harmful to them, destructive, what I consider not good, they still can do good things, right? And sometimes those good things are pivoting points where, okay, now I can change the trajectory because here's a part of what I'm doing that actually is in line with the way my life should be going, or a direction my life should be going. And so I think I'm using it in a real general term, but a lot of these things can, at least even the illustrations that I shared, when you're always wanting to get the word in, or you're always wanting to, one up somebody, sometimes those things could be good, right? Sometimes it's good because you have a good story that can actually contribute to the conversation in a healthy way, and it's good to throw that input in there. So it's not like a bad thing all the time. That's why the discerning is there. It is having to simmer and think about it. It is wondering, where is this coming from? Why am I needing to say this? Why am I needing to do this? Why am I wanting this? Is it coming from a healthy place, or is it coming from an unhealthy place? Mm-hmm. Right? And so it could be the thing in itself is neither good nor bad, right? That car is just a car. That shirt, whether it's got the, brand on it or not, it's just a shirt. Is it good or bad? Well, it depends. Where's it coming from, with you? And so, oh no, I'm going to use this because I'm going to really impress my friends because I think now this is going to inflate my identity. Might be a bad thing. It might be an unhealthy thing. Again, the words, we can use so many different words, but yeah, I don't want good and bad to be seen as heaven, hell kind of things. It's like, oh, this is good, you're going to heaven. This is bad, you're going to hell. Life isn't that cut and dry, clear. At least my life hasn't been. I know some people out there act like it is. I have my doubts, but yeah, I don't know. Did that answer the question, or?
I think so. I think not necessarily. I did say it was a question, but I think a lot of times when I say question, I'm trying to just invite people to see what they think. Mm-hmm. And I have this whole thing in my head about like, if I asked you a question, I'm asking you to do me a favor of tell me what you think. Mm-hmm. And now it's my responsibility to just accept whatever you have to say. Not like accept it like, oh, that's the truth, I'm going to live by that, but listen to you.
Yeah.
And no, I think that's along the lines of what I was trying to inspire. So thank you. Yeah. And it made me think like, in terms of like letting something simmer, or being patient throughout the storm, or trying to live with uncertainty. I think that kind of like my mind like takes an analogy and just goes way too far with it. But you could think about it in different ways, where like letting something simmer is like in the moment, having patience in the storm, or holding your tongue in the conversation and listening. Yeah. But then you can take that same idea and do it before, and I'll call that marinating, where you pray on it before you do it. You sit and you think about your actions before you go and clap back at the person who did something to you yesterday, and there's an opportunity for you to do something tomorrow, and you're like, take a second and marinate on it. Yeah. Or sleep on it. And then after, like, let's say it crashed and burned and it went bad, and you stuck that cake in the oven, you put it up to 500 degrees and it's a black mess in there. Like, if you want to clean that pan, sometimes you got to put stuff in that pan and let it sit. And sometimes, like, I love to talk, if you know me, and sometimes I talk too much and overshadow people or give them ideas that are not good for them. Not like I'm trying to like say stuff that's not good for people, but sometimes people are not in a certain place to accept a certain idea, or they don't have a prerequisite or something like that. And afterwards, in my mind, I trying to debrief and I think about it and I'm like, was that right? Was that good? Did I say something I shouldn't have said? Did I talk too much? Did I listen? And sometimes, well, most of the time, the answer is like, this was bad. You shouldn't have done this. Why did you say that? And like by doing that debriefing, like I've come to this understanding where there can be a certain momentum in a conversation for me where I feel the need to contribute, and I can feel that need. It's like how you can feel the air conditioning gets turned on and you can feel it coming and getting colder. Like I can feel this need of like, I'm gonna have to say something, or like these people are talking something I don't believe, and if I sit here, it's like me validating it, but I don't believe that I need to say something, and I can feel that happening. And by me debriefing and cleaning the pans after I've done the wrong thing by like jumping in there saying, I don't believe that, do this, then like over time I'm like, oh, so I am noticing more. I can think of ways to help me like deal with that, and not necessarily like me just biting my tongue and controlling myself, but really where is that coming from?
Yeah.
And why do I want to do that? And is it in certain specific situations and stuff like that? So like the marinating I think is important, the simmering is important, and then also like clean your dishes after you cook.
Yeah. No, that inquisitive spirit is so important. That's the whole discerning, right? I mean, it's like say that it's I shared with the cohort that I'm in, you know, I always want to say something. I feel like I always have something to contribute. I always got a question, and I was like, oh, this would be great. Oh, I want to say this. And I find myself saying, you know what? You don't have to say everything that comes to your mind. You know, it's okay to listen. And just pausing and stopping and letting other people speak has been wonderful. It's helped me learn so much about myself and from others that has been good for me to learn. And it's happened by me not jumping in. And what's happened is I like, why do I always have to jump in? And part of it's, you know, just my upbringing, what I was taught. Well, you know, if you have the right information, you got to give it, and you're a pastor, so, you know, you should have that voice. And it's like, it's just not how I see Jesus. You know, I don't see him having to have the last word. I see him silent before, you know, Herod and before Pilate. You know, don't you know I have the power to give you life and death? He goes, no, it's not yours to give. You know, he didn't have to justify himself. He didn't have to get the last word in. And there's something powerful in that, being able to sit there and kind of discern what's going on here. Why do I feel like I need to speak? Why shouldn't I just let this conversation go and listen to it and enjoy it? You know, and it's been real good for me, just trying to do that in life. I mean, to be honest, the way I do the most injustice is with my wife in interrupting her, where she's talking and I finish what she's going to say, right? Which is just awful. Don't ever do that. And I know it frustrates the heck out of her, and I think I'm better, but yeah, it's just like, no, I know what you're going to say, so I'll go. And I just stop her from expression, right? And I just shut her down because, oh, here, I know what you're going to say. And it's like, why do I have to do that? What's going on where I feel like I need to finish that and end that conversation? And it's really one of those things where I've had to stop and look and discern and say, what's going on here? Because it doesn't feel right. Right? It doesn't feel good. All those words. It doesn't feel like it's the right trajectory for a healthy, you know, person to go in. And so those are the kinds of things that are a little cringe-worthy for me, you know. And I just feel like, don't like that about myself. And so if I've done that to you guys, whoever you are out there, I apologize for my needing to get that last word in. Jason, any things from Sunday that you want to chime in about?
Oh, I just been thinking about Lord of the Rings, so. Just a side note, the other night at work, the sun was red, the sky was red, and I told my coworker, I go, blood has been spilled this day. I'm like, you watch Lord of the Rings? He's like, no. All right.
about our second breakfast.
Yeah, that's my favorite quote. I don't think he knows about second breakfast.
Well, Jordan, any other thoughts you have on this? I mean, we're coming up, well, we're at an hour, but
I mean, I feel like we can go forever. I think that this has been a good conversation, so I appreciate you for inviting me and allowing us to have this conversation. And it's interesting because every time Sam asks me to have one of these conversations, I have to listen to the service again and like sit and really think about it. Because I have this nervous thing about me. Like I go into the board meeting and then the boss asks me, "Oh, what if this job?" And I have no idea what he's talking about. So I was like, I have to like really listen. And I think it's nice sometimes to have that little push to do that, to dig a little deeper, and then have the debriefing episode after. Because this is cleaning the dishes. I think 'cause we had the talk on Sunday, and now we get to talk about it, and it really helps you kind of like participate with it and live with it. Yeah. And have it. So I appreciate that. And I would like as a last thought, I really think that it's easy to listen to a conversation like this and get out of it, these are things I do wrong, I need to get better, I'm not good enough, which is the opposite of what we're trying to give. And so I would stress that if you're feeling like that or you're feeling convicted, I think sometimes believers can have this idea that like the goal is to feel convicted, like, oh, I'm doing a good job because I feel convicted. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but like it's not always about I'm wrong, I need to get better. I think it's about realizing where I'm at and looking at where I'm going, which is two different ways of looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
So don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, and to in that vein, because that was kind of the whole, I guess, summation of what I was trying to say is you are loved right now where you are and who you are. There you go. And that's the healthy place to start from, right? That's where you get your identity, is in the fact that you are in the image of God, you are loved, whoever you are, wherever you are. It does not matter, right? All the other things, you know, the economic classes, the ethnicity, the intelligence, none of those things change your identity in the eyes of God, that you are loved. And if you can start from there, all the ups, all the downs, all the left, right turns, all the recalibrations, just a part of your life, but they don't change your identity in the eyes of God. You are loved. And that was displayed through Christ, and we need to receive that. So, ta-da. That's it.
Cool.
All right, man. Thank you, Jordan. Thanks, Jason. Thank you guys for watching. Those who watch later, remember, Friday, June 11th, 7 p.m. on Zoom. We'll have that on our social media. The link. Hope to see you guys then and to see you again Sunday. Take care. God bless, guys.